This week's episode is brought to you by Chris Ray and Max Addington. Thank you, Chris Ray and Max Addington. It's with the generous support of listeners just like you that helps keep our undercover rabbits deeply embedded into the shady, criminal underworld of international intrigue and espionage, which we report to our operations manager in low Earth orbit using this podcast as an encrypted disguise for the signal using double backwards reverse psychology to make you double think this exact confession. If you'd like to help us keep our network of spies active all across the globe or just hear the second half of this episode, then please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you instant access to our extended version of this show, but all of our shows, which are browsable from right within the Spotify app after you sign in. But not only that, I'll send you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl sticker of our Big Bunny Baphomet cover art, and you'll even get the secret passcode to our Discord server, where we debrief our agents in real time. Come join the squad. In fact, we're going to be streaming the film in question this week, and you can come watch it with us Monday, June 10th in our Discord. Try not to miss it. If you enjoy the free show just fine and would rather save those $5 for a used ceramic gravy boat at the thrift store, then please consider giving us a like, subscribe, or share on your social media platform of choice. Heck, a positive review on Spotify would help us nicely. On the flip side, our $20 tier and up features a monthly tarot reading from yours truly that does not expire. If you've already signed up, message me and we'll schedule your reading as soon as possible. On this week's show, we dive back into the world of science fiction author extraordinaire Philip K. Dick by looking at his breakout dystopian future-prophesying 1977 classic, A Scanner Darkly, alongside its faithful 2006 film adaptation. If you're not familiar, the movie's free on YouTube. Check it out. In the free section of the show, we explore the biblical quote the title of the work is referring to, and why this film and numerous other works by Philip K. Dick could be considered gnostic in character. We dig into and find a number of gems by looking at the name etymology of A Scanner Darkly's characters, starting of course with Bob, which reveals numerous connections to gnostic and ancient Egyptian wisdom. In the extended edition of the show, we go even deeper into what's really going on in the iconic medical examination scene. By looking at Egyptian hieroglyphs, we get some heavy insight into the meaning behind the symbols used in this scene and triangulate an ancient myth which reflects all the major themes in A Scanner Darkly. If that were not enough, we even find how the numerical value of the examination room reflects these ideas in a coherent way that further clarifies the deeper narrative behind Philip K. Dick's strangely charming and tortured tale, before concluding with a discussion about which order of angels is responsible for reading Freck's endless list of sins. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Bought some shoes from a drug dealer.
Oh?
I don't know what he laced them with, but I've been tripping all day.
Good one.
I like that. It's fun.
You heard about the drug-addicted fisherman who accidentally caught a duck?
No?
Yeah, he was using the bait quack cocaine.
Close enough. Now he's hooked on quack.
Mari's got like 2 or 3 correct ones so far, I think.
I can do better.
I have 0.
Did you hear about the junkie that was addicted to brake fluid and crystal meth? He said he could stop anytime. What do you call a dictionary using meth?
What?
An addictionary. Ha ha ha.
That was too easy, though.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just ruminate on the unpleasant fact that evil wizard demigods who rule over this dimension also sometimes dabble in international criminal conspiracy to round out their ever-expanding portfolio of shadows. Nay, we examine the ontological conundrum through the lens of high-tech weaponized religious mythology from the brilliantly warped mind of Philip K. Dick and his visceral, paranoid, drug-addled futuristic science fiction dystopia classic, A Scanner Darkly. I'm your host, Luke Madrid, sometimes known as the Hack Rabbit. I'm joined this week by the mind-altering psycho deli dog, Mari-sama.
You gotta try that gabagool, the pastrami, the soprasada. They'll blow your freaking mind.
The inside-out, upside-down man, Malachor 5.
Hey, I brought the stuff you asked for. You got the money?
And the dark-haired, demi-sensual demi-goddess, Hecate Astra.
Hello. Are you jiving me? I think you're jiving me.
The jig is up.
Cheese it.
The jig is up, I just got here. Really, I want a jig that I can get down to, not so much get up to. Like in the Coolio song.
I don't even know what that means.
Or is that Lakeside?
I watched The Scanner Darkly within the year that it came out on VHS, and it was pretty cool because of the way that the animation is done over the live action filming that they did.
The rotoscoping.
Yeah, and it took them like a year or a year and a half to completely redraw one of the greatest stories ever told, written by Philip K. Dick, A Scanner Darkly. I was too young to know the magic and psychology that is embedded in his work at the time, but I still caught on that it was about like a surveillance state, this panopticon conspiracy that somebody's always watching you. You know, growing up in LA, there was a lot of drug addicts who were taking apart their TVs and tripping the out in their yard.
I call them dumpster diver MacGyvers.
And you just see the whole thing degrade over time. And it's pretty fucking brutal. And that's what this story is talking about on the surface. If you're too young like I was, it's about drugs. Don't do drugs. It's going to kill you. You're going to die.
I remember when it came out, I was in college and people are like, oh man, you gotta see this movie. It's about conspiracy and, you know, the Illuminati, man. They're always watching, and drugs and the altered state of mind. And, oh, Alex Jones in the... It really is a cautionary tale against drugs. Although it's not one where you're supposed to feel bad about your life or your life decisions. It says in the epilogue, like don't blame my friends for all the bad things that happened to them. They were punished way too harshly. And the rotoscoping. It's not that I hate it. I just don't see what's that impressive about it. It looks like if you exported all your film stripping in Photoshop, applied a few layers to it, and then put it back. But you're telling me they actually physically drew on the frame? Because it looks like a filter.
Like 50-50. They were using an earlier version of Photoshop to create scenes and then change up the color palette, I guess, in different ways. I'm with you, though. It does look cheap to today's standards, but it was a real movie that was shot like a normal movie. They just layered it with like a trippy experience on top of it.
It was the filter, but they did have animators go through every frame and do strokes on it to accentuate certain parts. But at the same time, I disagree. I think that the art style using the rotoscoping is imperative to show at the base level of how the characters are experiencing it, because everything is seamless. If they had used CGI for some scenes, I don't think it would have had the same impact of, oh my gosh, is this guy hallucinating or did he actually see that person there? It adds to the story and how it unfolds.
I agree. It comes across like an unreal reality. The entire color palette is kind of earth tony or sickly, like even like that toxic green kind of color, or earth tone, like dirty. And I think it's supposed to give you that kind of feeling of being unsettled or disoriented that you would get with, you know, bad trips or hallucination. I think that's kind of a deliberate lens to put on top of it.
I mean, even sometimes as the perspective shifts in the camera angle, it feels dizzy because stuff is moving and breathing almost as if you're on a trip when you're watching it.
Look at the Thoth Deck's art for debauchery, and you'll get the color scheme and the vibe of this. Makes me sick.
Yeah, totally.
That's an interesting point because I found Kabbalistic tarot symbolism in the film. Is it really there? Or am I imagining it? Or did my shadow handler put it there? Or my roommate to drive me f***ing crazy?
It's been the cat all along. Plotting against you.
It's you guys, isn't it? Mars like, always has been.
No, it's just laughable because you're the obvious member of a terrorist organization infiltrating our ranks.
Oh, jeez.
So the movie's neat and all, but at the same time, it doesn't add anything new, except for probably one part, and we'll talk about that later. But it does include everything that's mentioned in the book in one way or another.
I don't visualize things very well. The book does jump around quite a bit, so I found pairing the film with the book to be very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is probably one of the hardest films or books to cover as a podcast because the story itself is insane, and then it's presented in insane manner.
Impressively, Philip K. Dick also wrote in a beautiful style that pulls your point of view down into the scenes as they're unfolding. He would describe what characters were seeing or thinking between what they do or an action or what they say out loud. This is kind of like a first-person writing style, a combination of the unreliable narrator and stream of consciousness style writing mixed with a third-person perspective from outside of the characters. So it's very disorienting the way he writes it and the voices that he uses to describe what's going on.
And so, yes, it's difficult to follow along sometimes, but it's also a little too easy to relate to some of the characters. It's a bit like a podcast where you feel like you're hanging out with friends, but in this case, they're burnouts, narcs, and junkies. This is because A Scanner Darkly is an autobiographical passion project based on true events, one that its author, Philip K. Dick, claims to have witnessed firsthand during the fallout of his fourth marriage in 1970. He basically goes on to say that if it's in the book, I saw it happen. Like, there's some fictionalizing going on, but I have witnessed the things in this book. So when his wife left him, all he had left was his big 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, and he opted to fill this empty space with street kids and junkies who would become the inspiration for A Scanner Darkly. It was during this time Dick became hopelessly addicted to amphetamines, which he had used to write off and on for years, 60 pages of final copy a day at the best of times, but during this period, he stopped writing entirely. Now, this went on for about 2 years. The love interest, who appears, like in so many of Philip K. Dick's novels, as an incarnation of the divine, was actually based on a real person, a girl just shy of 20 who had taken a fascination with PKD at the time. Although the relationship never became intimate or sexual, she served as his full-time companion until Dick left to go on a talk in Vancouver, Canada, which culminated with admitting himself into a recovery clinic where he got the idea for the story. Whether he actually caught them farming heroin at the recovery clinic, nobody can say.
If there's anywhere where there's a recovery clinic that's also growing poppies and making it into heroin and selling it, it would be in Vancouver.
So when Dick got out of the recovery clinic, he got remarried, and then Tess, his now 5th wife, would help him write A Scanner Darkly, acting as its silent co-author. She has like 50% of the rights in her name. Now for Dick, it was a harrowing, deeply personal process writing A Scanner Darkly. Tess once stated that she'd often find her husband weeping as the sun rose after a long night of writing. He'd just at his typewriter, just crying onto the keys.
Aww.
Based on the epilogue, it sounds like he lost a lot of friends to, the post-Summer of Love 70s burnout era.
Is he saying he lost a lot of friends that were also undercover feds trying to...
I don't think so.
No, if you
Is Philip K. Dick
listen,
a Fred?
according to Robert Anton Wilson, he's like, if you were in a friend group of druggies and burnouts, a handful of them would have been informants. For sure.
Yeah, because the Cold War stuff is really heavy in the book, and they kind of changed the word to terrorist in the movie, obviously, because that's the new word for it.
So it was a challenge at this point in his life writing A Scanner Darkly because he was getting clean. But it also didn't hurt that his star was on the rise. He was starting to get recognition and awards for his other books. Now, because of this success, Philip K. Dick felt some pressure to fit A Scanner Darkly into the science fiction genre, which is why some of those elements sort of feel like an afterthought. Elements like the scramble suit were later added in the creative process. They weren't there originally. This also kind of explains why, despite its surface, A Scanner Darkly presents as conspiracy theory wrapped in science fiction, but many of the deeper themes are in fact spiritual, even religious. For instance, the title of the novel comes from the New Testament, from the 1 Corinthians 13:12, which reads,
"For now we see through a glass, darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know even as I also am known."
Thank you, Yoda. In this passage, Paul is making a statement about the nature of truth, but in a way that reflects Gnostic sentiment, the default worldview of early Christianity, and one which Philip K. Dick would come to be known for. To hear about classical Gnosticism, our episodes on the Gospels of Thomas and Hypostasis of the Archons are a solid place to start. I think we're going to be doing more soon. What makes Philip K. Dick's work so compelling, however, is that he adopted these big ideas from early Gnostic Christianity and brought them into the present with unhinged futuristic science fiction. He's probably the reason it's so popular in the modern world. For listeners who are yet unfamiliar with the name Philip K. Dick, you may just be familiar with the film adaptations of his numerous novels. Some of those include Screamers, Paycheck, Imposter, The Adjustment Bureau, Next, Radio Free Albemuth, Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report, and of course, A Scanner Darkly. In fact, quite a few of those I mentioned are somewhat new that came in the wake of A Scanner Darkly, and of course, most people know the really big ones. And if you know Philip K. Dick, there's a bit of a running motif in his work. In terms of A Scanner Darkly and the biblical quote that it references, it deals with the classic classical philosophical issue of epistemology, how much we could possibly know, but through a Gnostic religious framework.
So, in simple terms, epistemology is a study of the mind's relation to what is called reality. It's a philosophical inquiry into how much humans can truly know, questioning the limits of our knowledge, and, like Luke said, how much can we really know?
I did bring this word up in the atheism episode because atheism is all about epistemology because you're questioning how much can God know in that same idea of epistemology. So it's very important because God is supposed to know everything, right?
It's one of the conditions for him being a god, at least for most people. And then, how are we supposed to know if God is real or not, even if he is real or not? How are we supposed to know? According to epistemology, maybe we can't, but then again, maybe we can. Now, according to a classical Gnostic or Christian worldview, we exist in a dark, perverted world called the kenoma, a word which in Greek means emptiness or void. This kenoma is the world of sensorial delights and horrors, described as the kingdom of this world, the region of matter and material things, the land of shadow and darkness. In Gnostic cosmology, this kenoma is ruled over by the blind abortive demiurge or public artificer, who maintains his dark world through archons or magistrates, who in turn watch over and dictate the destiny of mankind. We love talking about this. The kenoma, as such, stands in stark contrast to the pleroma, or fullness, the heavenly realm where the true God resides, where our soul is originally from, and where Jesus Christ is trying to bring us home to. The problem is, we're kind of stuck here in the kenoma, a place Philip K. Dick would come to term the Black Iron Prison, which he represents in so many colorful ways through his various science fiction dystopias, of which A Scanner Darkly is but one. The issue Paul is exploring in Corinthians is the same that Dick is exploring here in A Scanner Darkly. The operative idea being, as long as we exist here, in the material world, we can see divinity dimly only, as if through tinted glass. How then, in such darkness, are we ever to truly know ourselves?
As Bob Octor says, what does a scanner see? He asks himself. I mean, really see? Into the head? Down to the heart? Does a passive infrared scanner like they use, or a cube-type hollow scanner like they use these days, see into me, into us, clearly or darkly? I hope it does, he thought. See clearly, because I can't any longer these days see into myself. I see only murk. Murk outside, murk inside. I hope for everyone's sake the scanners do better. Because, he thought, if the scanner sees only darkly, the way I myself do, then we are cursed. Cursed again, and like we have been continually, and will wind up dead this way, knowing very little and getting that little fragment wrong, too.
In this way, A Scanner Darkly is about the tormented thirst for gnosis of self and of the world, but under a condition of unfair darkness and oppression. To Philip K. Dick, the Black Iron Prison is not some theological abstraction, but a pressing spiritual struggle. And so that uncomfortable, dirty, sickly, nowhere to turn to, no one to blame but yourself, everything is falling down around me all the time, that's not just the story to Philip K. Dick, that's the whole damn world. And there's something very wrong with it.
All right, so to simplify things a little bit, who are the characters and will their names help us get a better understanding of what the story is about? Alongside the main character struggling for their sanity, part of untangling the confusion that is A Scanner Darkly, it's about figuring out which character is which because the entire narrative jumps around with some characters having more than one name in the story. So let's start with our main character, Bob.
So if this is an autobiographical story, this is the Philip K. Dick character that he wrote to stand in for himself. So without spoiling anything, Bob is a drug addict that hangs out with other drug addicts. But here's the thing. He's not just a drug addict. He's actually an undercover cop that goes by the name Fred. And Fred's job is to watch this group of friends, specifically Bob. So he's like watching himself. Supposedly, the idea behind the mission is to follow the trail of supply for this illicit, illegal drug named Substance D as close to the source as possible so they could catch some big fish and make some busts. The problem comes, of course, as I mentioned, when he gets assigned to monitor himself. Which is problematic because the people that sent him to monitor himself don't actually know who he is because he's anonymous because he's wearing a scramble suit. Oh, man. And then they kidnap Alex Jones.
The point is have you thought about that yet? Because I'm somebody that thought I could fix this, and I'm starting to think about having to eat my neighbors.
So Bob Arctor actually has 4 names total, but we'll get to that as we go. So his first name, Bob, or Robert, it's a nickname for Robert. It's a masculine Old North French form of the Old High German Hrodbert, which means bright fame or bright with glory. And it's also from the root breg, to shine, bright, white. In Middle English from mid 13th century, it's also a designation for a robber, a vagabond, or lowly person. And there are also some terms, Robertsmen, which are robbers or marauders, and Robert Renabout, which is a wastrel, a good for nothing. I think this perfectly describes a burnout, one who shines so brightly for such a short amount of time that they exhaust their own spirit very quickly, live fast, die young. But maybe Bob's short moment of bright fame may bring him some kind of glory, and that his sacrifice of getting burnt so badly can help bust the drug ring that has caused so much harm and death to other people around him.
The fact that he's a junkie, dropout, good for nothing makes Robert a perfect name for him. And unlike most cases, we know for a fact that Philip K. Dick was an etymology nerd and purposefully gave his characters meaningful names.
There's also a point in the book where Bob kind of reflects on the name Arthur and he relates it to actor. Like he's the star of the show. So I think on the other hand, as the main character, that his name may represent the bright fame of the sun, the star of our solar system. And in terms of Egyptian mythology, that would be Ra, a symbol of consciousness itself. And we see the journey of Bob's consciousness through various stages throughout the book. The sun, as the all-seeing eye itself, is a scanner. That's not just Egyptian mythology.
That's why we always see the eye in the pyramid, because
Yep.
Egyptians knew this.
So I'm sure many people are familiar with that symbol, and that is the solar eye of Ra. But also, since Bob is an undercover cop, to me, this implies the journey of Ra through the Duat, or the underworld, the dark. But Bob is also just one of his names, right? The name of the piece, A Scanner Darkly, could refer to Ra's journey through the underworld, or alternatively, or maybe in addition to, it might also refer to the lunar eye of reflection, which is the eye of Thoth, or the eye of Horus. And I think as such, it would be referring to the dark side of consciousness, or the shadow aspect of consciousness, which really is a huge theme throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't put it past Philip K. Dick to do this stuff on purpose. We know that the eye of Ra is always beaming. It never blinks. But yet, the struggle of A Scanner Darkly is, how do I see through this darkness? How do I be receptive? How do I see wisdom? How do I get a clear sight of something?
Are we seeing clearly, or are we seeing darkly? Are we just crazy?
We either made all this stuff up that we're going to be talking about for this masterpiece that Philip K. Dick wrote for us, or he was talking exactly about what we're talking about, because it's kind of crazy how accurate some of our assumptions are. Like, it's so blatant if you are seeing darkly and seeing the light at the same time. Like, oh man, that's what we're going to do.
I think he tapped in.
He tapped in.
Yeah, I think if he did not know consciously, I think he tapped into the same egregores that we're going about.
Egregores, that's the word, because it's the secret weaving inside of the story, and I think we caught it. I think we found the cut.
All right, now hear me out. Some evidence that Bob can be associated with Ra is his proclivity for watching, which he explains in almost religious tones as an end in and of itself. The surveillance, he thought, essentially should be maintained, and if possible, by me. I should always be watching and figuring out, even if I never do anything about what I see, even if I just sit there and observe silently, not seen. That is important, that I, as a watcher of what happens, should be at my place, not for their sake, for mine. So he's starting to slip a little bit by this point, but nonetheless, we find these ideas also reflected in his middle name, Postlethwaite.
So yeah, we discover his middle name, Postlethwaite, in the novel when he's at the police station or something, and there's a file on him, and it has his full name, and he describes it as a Welsh name. Postle, as in the apostles, a follower of, the root post, as in after, or it could even refer to letter writing or communication and correspondence, like the post, the mail. Thwaite means field or land, and wait means watcher, watch over, or guardian. Wait also relates to lion wait or waiting in the wings, like a guardian that waits at the gates of a town and sounds the horn when something is happening or a new visitor has arrived at the gate. Altogether, this can mean someone who watches the fields and writes, authors something, and sends correspondence, letters, records of time, as what Bruce at the end of the novel is tasked to do at the end. And if you think about it, it, this is also what Fred all along when he watched the holoscanner tapes and compiled reports for the police.
You know, it almost sounds like Rider Waite.
Yeah, but he's writing as in authoring something, which is interesting because
That the joke?
it'll lead into something, his next name.
So by doing this watching of himself after he's done it, he hopes to gain insight into himself, which is, of course, the critical issue of the film/novel. But watching himself through a scanner, will he ever be able to actually know himself?
You show what we regard more as competition phenomenon than impairment.
Bob's last name is Arctur.
So, like Hecka was said earlier in the book, Arctur alludes to the fact that his name sounds like actor, which is meant to suggest the Latin word auctor, from which the word author derives. Auctor meaning one who gives increase, an originator, causer, a doer. I would also note that this sounds like architect, which has the same root word meaning of author, safe of a building. This indicates a builder, a creator with analytical precision. And straight out of Wikipedia, auctor may refer to an author of a work who is proficient in the subject matter, a scientist who first describes a species or other taxon, the seller at an auction, you know, the guy that rambles on like Boomhauer from King of the Hill.
You know, Bobby, I told him don't take from me, man. It don't life too short.
See, that's what struck me first with the name, someone who rattles off at a sale. It could also be auctori or auctor, which is a tax from, I believe, Latin times in Rome. There's also a saint, Arctur. He was a bishop of Metz, which was a Catholic saint from West France.
And of course, there's Archon, which is ruler or a magistrate, a lesser god and controller of human destiny, according to the Gnostics. So he could be seen as an archon of sorts.
As Arctur says in the book, in the script being filmed, he would at all times have to be the star actor, Arctur, he thought. Bob the actor who is being hunted. He who is El Primo, huntee.
See, he even refers to himself as El.
Well, that means but yeah.
I know, but I'm thinking of the biblical El Primo. I am the only God, there is none before me. It's a little like wink and a nod, maybe? I don't know.
I think it's there on purpose. El
That's cool.
Primo is the primest, right? Primordial.
The tip of the top, the cream of the crop.
And El, if you are looking at it from the Hebrew gematria perspective, it's one of the most powerful single sounds.
Yeah, and it reminds us that the demiurge, his name demiurge, means public artificer. He is an architect, a grand architect, if we're talking the Masons. And this might be a reference to some of the comedy behind the story that Bob becomes his own prison keeper by working undercover as Fred, who is tasked with surveilling himself. So what about the name Fred?
So Fred is Bob when he's in the office and doing his job amongst his coworkers, and he's wearing a suit that is constantly shifting his identity, and it has a voice filter, so it hides who he truly is on the inside of that suit. This is why this is commonly called a science fiction story, because of some of these things that Philip K. Dick was saying was going to exist in 1994.
They didn't have the internet yet, but this is as if you could be anonymous as you can be on the internet, but in person. So Fred, the undercover cop, wears a scramble suit, which prevents all the other police people from knowing that he's secretly Bob. And it prevents them from knowing Bob is Fred. It's really a lot of fun when you think about it. So yeah, he's eventually tasked with watching himself.
So let's learn a little bit more about old Fred. Fred is obviously short for Frederick, an old German name meaning peaceful ruler, derived from Fridu, peace, and Ri, ruler or king.
It's got the Riz. In many ways, Fred is a peaceful ruler. For instance, he could, but he doesn't really want to bust Donna. And if he does bust anyone he knows, he's gonna make sure that the system goes easy on them. But of course, the idea of kingship and archonic rulership does make some sense because he is part of the establishment. He's a law enforcement agent, and technically, he's a tool of this oppressive establishment. He, like the archons of Gnostic myth, is also a bit of a watcher.
The watcher becomes the watched, that watches the watched as both the watcher and the watched. I can dig it.
I feel like Fight Club owes this novel a big thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Now, as absurd as big task to watch yourself, humorous as it might be for the story, these plot points are actually a somewhat thoughtful reflection on the parables the Gnostic Christ offers us in the Gospels of Thomas. Specifically, verse 11.
Jesus said, "This heaven will pass pass away, and the one above it will pass away. The dead are not alive, living will not die. During the days when you ate what is dead, you made it come alive. When you are in the light, what will you do? On the day you were one, you became two. But when you became two, what will you do?
Does all that stuff sound like super familiar to what's happening in the book?
Yes. The duality, like the splitting of the personality, perfect.
It's like Dick read all that and he's like, what if I just did this literally? Like a Scanner Darkly meditates on the issues that Christ is talking about so intensely that to humorous effect, it becomes a literal part of this story. Now, the division of self between Bob and his law enforcement personality of Fred eventually begins to fracture, and he, like the reader, is left to question, what will he do? It is precisely this eating of slow death which sustained his operation for the benefit of living folk. But what happens when all of the deception is eventually removed? As we discover, the world of Bob, and secondly, the world of Fred, is also removed. Like this heaven passes away, that one passes away. It's all gone, buddy. And then the 12th verse of Gospels of Thomas is like, don't do what you hate because everything is going to be revealed eventually. No one's getting away with this. Somebody's going to watch the tapes. Somebody's going to figure it all out, basically. But of course, the theological equivalent.
I love this too because, the drug is named death. And there's very similar reflections when they're all in the rehab center that reflect this parable.
Yeah, like the dead should serve the living if possible. The living should not serve the dead, etc. It's like, what are they talking about? It sounds like they've got some new path philosophy they're trying to figure out. But we already got Jesus. Yeah. We already got the Gospels of Thomas,
We already got our vampire lord, all right? we serve this dead guy, not you, dead guy. Right, and Luke mentioned New Path. New Path in the story is, of course, the group that's trying to get people off of substance D, the drug that is destroying society, and this is why Bob has to go in and save the day, right?
And it's an important part of the story. There's some world building involved there. 20% of the entire population is on drugs. Everybody is tracked. We know where everyone is all the time. There's one exception. If you go to a New Path clinic, the police and the government cannot track you. If you are a drug dealer of some kind and you somehow put yourself in a New Path, the cops won't be able to find you. They'll change your identity. They'll keep you safe. So this is a big part of the universe. This rehabilitation center that will save you if there's no one else that can save you. So it's funny because it almost reminds me of how vulgar Christians think about Jesus Christ. Like, well, as long as I say this right before I die, I'm safe. See? Can't hurt me. I'm safe.
Yeah, as I fall into the lava, oh, Jesus Christ, you're my Lord and Savior. Thank you.
Oh, Jesus Christ, you're my Lord and Savior. Made it. I'm safe. F*** you guys.
Well, this New Path group, this rehabilitation center, is a cult because everything in this story is based off of Philip K. Dick's life. And he did join a cult when he left Southern California and went up to Vancouver. He did a speech in front of a bunch of weirdos like us on this podcast, probably. And I say that with pride. But while he was up in Vancouver, he got off of amphetamines and he joined this group.
A rehabilitation group? Like he had to wear the gown and, hang out in the living room and smoke cigarettes and watch a Disney Channel all day? Like that kind of rehabilitation group?
No cursing, no fast movements, no running near the pool. This story is kind of personal, and only because right now I'm thinking about it is this is something that's happening to my dad right now. He got deported to Mexico and he's out of his mind. He's past the point of no return and he's working in a labor church. He's a skilled person, but they're using him as a servant, I guess, but he's trying to get his life together at the same time. I haven't talked to him in a few years. It's a sad story. So Bob arrives at New Path's farm, which is like their inner order, their next level membership program, Discord group. They put him on a farm, it's called. And when he arrives there, he has a new name and it's Bruce.
But why the name Bruce? There's probably some intentionality behind it.
Yeah, so when he enters New Path, in the book, actually, he decides that his name should be Bruce at some point. And from Wikipedia, this name arrived in Scotland with the Normans, from the place named Brix, Manche in Normandy, France, meaning the Willow Lands or thick brush. Initially, it promulgated via the descendants of King Robert the Bruce, who lived from 1274 through 1329. And since then, it has been a Scottish surname that was pretty common.
So some guy named Bob brought it.
Robert the Bruce. Yep, Bob the Bruce.
Okay, so this is on purpose, this choice of names.
And there is a legend, too, that Robert the Bruce learned the value of perseverance from watching a spider spin a web.
This helps elucidate some things, because Willowlands is likely a reference to the field that Bruce meant to tend to. His sacrifice is ultimately part of a greater web being spun to catch the grower and distributor of the plant he is now working on to grow. And then numerous times in the Gospels of Thomas, the followers of Christ are referred to as inhabitants on somebody else's field. In one case, they're referred to as children. This is a repeated motif in the Gospels of Thomas.
And then postal weight, the watcher of the fields. So there's a lot of field allegories here going on.
It just clicked in my head, the whole Willowlands, because willows are trees. And the blue flowers are grown in the field that he ends up in as Bruce, right? And for me, the blue flowers would relate to the blue lotus in Egyptian artistic motifs and rituals. The blue lotus itself was symbolic of the sacred tree of Hathor.
Oh.
Which is divine feminine.
Upon my second watching of the movie and listening of the audiobook, the blue flowers thing really resonated because, for one, Dr. Octagon has a badass song called Blue Flowers.
I come prepared with the white suit and stethoscope, listen to your heartbeat, delete, beep, beep, beep.
And David Lynch is talking about blue roses.
Oh.
But also because of, Egyptian mythology, the lotus that you're talking about here.
So, like, for me, those blue flowers, they have a different name in the movie. And the name of those flowers in the movie is Clerodendrons Ugandan. I personally feel like the Claro part refers to, like clerics, like clairvoyant. Dendron means tree. So I think that's a direct link with that. And then Ugandans, that's in Africa. So I think that's kind of like a hint, African clairvoyant flower. It's related to the tree.
Wasn't the blue lotus flower in ancient Egypt considered psychedelic? Or it's portrayed in a way that suggests it is?
Yes, it has narcotic qualities to it. It's also a symbol of rebirth. It's said to first to emerge from the primordial waters. You could kind of think of it as being parallel to the primordial mound. So then I think in previous episodes I've gone into Nefertem. The blue lotus is a symbol of Nefertem, the reborn child. And so I feel like Bruce is his reborn. He is Nefertem.
He's childlike in nature, the way that he's gentle and slow.
Yeah. The blue lotus is also featured on the death card in the Thoth Tarot. And
wow.
When you
That's
talk
a good
about-
thing to observe, for sure.
it's a central part of the lesson. When you mention death, when you mention substance D, you are implying life at the same time. It's a cycle of things.
Yeah, and it's highly significant of the rebirth cycle, so death and life in Egyptian mythology. It's also very commonly used as offerings, so something that you offer, a gift for Thanksgiving.
Which is exactly what Bruce says.
Yeah, and it's a gift from the gods too, so he's reborn as a god.
Yeah, in the archonic sense, he's working for the gods. He's a slave now.
His ego had to die for this to happen, though. Yeah, and even the cycle that you're just referencing is of death and rebirth and how things cycle on and on. It also could relate inwardly, as in your own psyche. This could also be happening at a smaller scale. And I think the fact that Bob has so many different names and separate points of view during the book, at least 3, I think is an allusion to the different parts of the personality as also related to the parts of the cycle of death and rebirth. So, in other words, his different personalities or frames or points of view during the novel and the movie are the superego, ego, and id, if you're into Freudian stuff, or colloquially the subconscious, the rational self or mind, and the superconscious, or say perhaps your conscious or your higher self, your holy guardian angel, whatever terms are applicable to these parts of the individual psyche, in other words. But a particularly interesting quote stuck out to me from the book. He also says it in the movie, in which Bob is teasing a Freck in the driveway while he and the boys were trying to repair the car. He said to Freck, "The most dangerous kind of person," Arctur said, "is one who is afraid of his own shadow." And Charles Freck immediately drives away, wondering if Arctur was referring to him. Naturally, it seemed like he was, but Arctur could also be referring to himself.
So one of the moments that's exclusive to the book, if you listen to it or read it, while Bruce is at New Path, he tells a story about a black and white wolf to a little girl named Velma. It's a story that touches upon a real life story about Lobo and Blanca, who were the alpha pair of a very notorious and threatening pack of wolves that lived in frontier New Mexico times. And the farmers of New Mexico during this era, they hired the guy who eventually founded the Boy Scouts of America to come and hunt this wolf because it was costing them like tens of thousands of sheep and goats and cows a year, which is big money back in these days.
It's like this one Bonnie and Clyde wolf pair.
Yeah, totally. They were very smart and they evaded traps and they knew how to manipulate man's hunting capabilities. Ernest Thompson Seton, the founder of the Boy Scouts, sorry if I got the name wrong, but he found out that Blanca was Lobo's mate and he killed her, and then he spread Blanca's blood all over the field and eventually laid enough traps to capture Lobo.
Oh.
And he kept him alive. There's a photo of Lobo with 4 bear traps on each of his legs because he was treading the whole field looking for his love. And he was captured and he let the traps off of him, and the dog just was docile and stared into the mountains that was his kingdom because that was his territory, and was not the fearsome beast that he once was, even though he was pretty much okay besides the fact. And the founder of the Boy Scouts realized then and there that he needs to preserve nature because it's a whole story. He wrote a whole book about it. It's called Animals That I Know. But Lobo was the first one that he wrote about in his journal here. So Bruce is telling Velma a story about another wolf that was fearsome and was shot down by the whole town. And they hung up his pelt so that everybody could come and respect the animal for what it was. And this was a monument. It was a memorial to the natural beast. But Bruce is also telling Velma, animals like that need to be put down. There's no way that that animal can exist outside of the idea that they were fearsome and they got killed, and we need to show everybody that humans are better, right? So it's almost like he's telling this girl Velma that, without knowing it, that he's the very same wolf being sacrificed here in favor of the greater good so that everybody else could get off of substance D and have a chance at life, and that there's like a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. He doesn't know that he's a sacrificial wolf of his own legend. And it's very much like how Heath Ledger was told by Jack Nicholson, be careful with that role of the Joker because it might kill you. And it's almost like Heath Ledger is this wolf who was slain for a greater idea to manifest, and we caught the bad guys, right? Like, is it worth it? Or don't you just become the villain in that same process?
Well, it's funny you'd bring up the Joker because we've done some occult math on this show, and I think we have proven that the myth of the werewolf is related to the evil that the Joker is known for, because way back in ancient society, when you had a boy coming of age to become a man, you basically just shove him out in nature, give him a wolf's pelt, and be like, you go pillage and fight and kill with Rufio and his buddies, and just come back, once a year, and then, you go terrorize and exploit all the people on the edge of society, right?
Very Roman, Romulus. And,
yeah. Which is interesting because the state is also sort of doing that in this story. They're being like, okay, you undercovers, right? You wear the wolf pelt. We won't know who you are. And you go out and you do whatever you want. And you have to kill and maim and destroy all these people on the fringe of society with the hopes of keeping those who are already here scared into place and doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? And you can take their stuff, right? You hunt them and take their stuff. Bob gets money from this operation. And then, ever so often he has to come back to his host society and act like a normal person.
That Joker role is supposed to be the fall guy. And that's what Bruce, which is interesting because it's Bruce Wayne, the Joker, right? Different names for Batman. But in this scenario, Batman has lost to the madness of the drugs. And, he's getting sacrificed. And it's what the Joker's always wanted almost. But in that same operation, the Joker is born through it because finally Batman is laughing. It's the killing joke. That's my joke for that bit. I can't help but laugh at all the levels that Philip K. Dick seems to have embedded in this story.
Man, that would be a great Batman movie. It's just based on A Scanner Darkly. Bruce Wayne.
Well, even Batman sometimes has to take hallucinogens to test himself. To make sure he's ready.
It's like if Batman became a junkie and then he had to go into Arkham, right? Track down.
They've made that before.
No!
He must have friends.
Well, strangely, this brings us to the medical examination scene, which, if you'd like to hear about our symbolic interpretation of the cards shown to Bob, the hidden meaning of the number of the room he's being tested in, a whole bunch of stuff about Egyptian hieroglyphs, and a nearly endless list of clever mythological symbolic references that Philip K. Dick wove throughout his Gnostic myth, then please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended version of this episode, but the extended version of all our episodes going back over 5 years. I'll send you a 5x5 high quality vinyl sticker for our Big Bunny Baphomet cover art, and you'll get the secret keys to our Discord server where you can meet up with us Monday night and watch A Scanner Darkly so you can be ready for part 2, because there is too much to talk about in one episode, and we're gonna talk more about Gnosticism in future episodes, so we better be prepared. Damn it.
Honestly, I don't think anybody has gone deeper into this work of art than we have.
Nope.
It's one of those things where you hear it a lot. You're like, oh, Philip K. Dick was Gnostic. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And then you're like, oh, well, let me tell you about this thing called Gnosticism. And then your brain's like, what the and then, like, you never actually get to explaining what is Gnostic about it. You know what I mean? It's just like...
Yeah, you climb up and you just find yourself on a farm and there's just a bunch of carrots around you.
Like, welcome to the farm. You go spray that over there. We're going to be over here eating the carrots and shooting lasers.
Pew pew.